First things first, I had to deal with those fleshy creatures. One of them was even more bulgy than the others, if you believe it. Disgusting. I couldn't tell whether they were dressed up for some obscene celebration or merely strange beings with bloating bodies. What was that curious thing down there? It was clearly trying to do something, but what? Oh no. But since I was feeling a bit playful at this point, having finally arrived at the capital, I took the time to revisit the great bow obtained from the rot-infested general. Ha! It was indeed amusing, but the weapon lacked a certain weight and wasn't anywhere near as pleasing to use as hardened steel. Moments later, as I entered a dark and overgrown chamber, I was taken aback by the messy interior and the unexpected moist air. Plants were slowly crawling inside what apparently used to be an office of some sort. Who was that? It was one of those cursed with ugliness, so foul they had to hide their faces. After dealing with that rude fellow, I found my way to a small lift, transporting me further down into this already overwhelming city. Something was wrong, though. This place should be buzzing with life, and citizens should be wandering the streets, gossiping. Instead, it felt abandoned and drained of life. They just sat there. Even though I eventually found a couple of mean-spirited residents, that distinct feeling of loneliness and emptiness never really went away. The city somehow felt hollow. Oh, how lovely. Something else to lift my spirits. I had come upon the sad remains of an individual who apparently had been tortured in the most vile way and killed. Who could have done such a thing? Wait a moment. I had seen this long ago. While being chased in the cursed darkness of the volcano manor, I had caught a glimpse of it. This entire capital had somehow lost all of its vitality. I had seen long-forgotten graveyards with more life than this tomb of a bygone culture. Oh, someone nearby was playing a flute. For some reason, I ended up getting ambushed by a fellow who smelled like a brothel, and another of those ugly creatures. While the great bow lacked a certain pleasure when used from afar, it did serve its purpose on this occasion. But as I afterwards walked through narrow corridors, I noticed sand. Something was happening to this place. It was being devoured by nature itself. Finding a weary knight resting nearby, I generously helped that tired and old warrior to his final destination, and soon thereafter made progress in this maze. What a magnificent street! Grand statues adorned this beautifully crafted city, but still there was no one in sight. It was but a ghost town, or so I thought, because out of nowhere I was attacked by an infernal tree, and within minutes I had to palaver with a couple of local knights. You want some affection as well? Come get it, you vain peacock. Was that really all they had? Pathetic. Degeneration was the only word that came to mind. Over time, they had become fleeting shadows of the original warriors who once guarded this city. Well, most of them. Give it a rest, won't you? I get it. Whoa. Had they called for reinforcements? That hurt me. Stop it! Please don't! Honestly, it was a bit much to send an entire garrison after me. There was so much that didn't make sense in this world, but as I sat in safety next to a site of grace, contemplating that strangely cold flicker of light sprouting from the earth itself, I realized that a visit to the Roundtable hold was required. I had to see for myself whether that vile and disgusting creature I'd come upon recently truly was the monster Morgott had spoken about with such dread, and maybe even uncover whether it was that very devil who was responsible for that grisly murder scene nearby. He must have noticed the concern and disgust on my face, because suddenly something changed in his demeanor.
No. Wait. You have felt the curse. I can smell it on you. The box, yet tender. Apparently my seedbed is ripe and waiting. 'Twas a brief respite, I must say. Go and unshackle my corporeal flesh, trapped in the sewer jail below the capital.
Wait, what did he just say? He was in the capital?
I can kill you and defile your corpse. Then the pox will truly be your own.
That despicable eater of dung deserved to die, and to think that he was resting in a cell below my city? If I were to become the ruler of this aging kingdom and rejuvenate it, I would not only have to exercise restraint and humility, I would also have to make sure that parasites like that didn't exist anywhere near. I couldn't, with a clear conscience, proceed with my plans of seizing power here while someone so foul was lurking in the shadows. It was as clear as the summer's sun. I had to go down there, find him, and erase the blight he had become. Heading straight toward that dashing guard waiting for me, I was taken aback by his unexpected hostile response. The next couple of attempts showed some progress, but it was almost as if those vulgarly large arrows of his were bending their paths in the very air itself, not at all adhering to the laws that usually governed this world. And when I finally managed to avoid those devilish objects, that gleeful peacock had another surprise up his self-righteous sleeve. Another one! That did it. I didn't want to slay that foul archer and his lurking friend with this noble sword after all. Nay, they deserved to have their heads bashed in with something large and rusty. As I carefully sought another approach, I was given a most delightful opportunity to surprise the culprit, who in turn had startled me, and it felt delicious. I made sure to smite every single living creature in the near vicinity, and as the remaining servants had been sent off into the great unknown, I sat for a moment in the shade and caught my breath. The capital and the erdtree towered over me, along with the skeleton of that long-dead dragon, which had apparently once attacked this city. What a nightmare that must have been. Screaming children, parents fleeing to no avail, and infernal flames erupting everywhere. Degeneration might be an undeniable fact, but once upon a time this kingdom must have been glorious. Well, there was no way around this. I had to go down there. In the middle of this old and crumbling neighborhood, I found an ancient incantation, and more of those disgusting things, cursed with a milky and sticky substance instead of blood. I wasn't really in the mood for obscenities of that sort, so I respectfully declined and walked the other way. Who was that big fellow? He didn't look particularly festive, but I wasn't really feeling it anymore, which in turn made me seek a moment of peace in what turned out to be a small chapel. Would you look at that? A large set of armor, made for an especially burly warrior, was placed on a bed, along with a magnificent and ever so suggestive nightgown. So soft, that fabric felt enticing. There was something about this dress that made me recall my latest trip to the Roundtable hold, and that generous damsel I was so fond of, warming.
You are so very warm.
Outside once more, I now dealt with that brutish thug, whose only strength apparently was his monstrous lack of decent manners. And good looks. What was that helmet? Why would anyone wear such a thing? While trying to find my way down into the sewers, I came upon more knights, but a bit more interesting was the disgusting tree spirit that rose like a nightmare from beneath the ground and tried to swallow me whole. This old part of the city was like a maze. Ha! I see you, creep. Come down here, won't you? Let me give you a hand. The foul smell indicated that I was going in the right direction, as did the rats. What was that thing? Oh, it was waiting for travelers to ambush. That was hardly a proper way to welcome anyone. But regardless of what path I chose, I always ended up the same place. How in heaven's name would I even get underground? This bloody city was a labyrinth. Ah, there it was. A well was being guarded by one of those nasty creatures. And it didn't take me long to garner the courage to jump down into the unknown. This was the right way. It felt like it. Yet as I pushed the heavy and rusted gates open, I still got a bad feeling about this place. It didn't really help that I was now walking in filthy and stale water, and had to fight my way through countless rats, festering in the dark as disease-bearing gifts from the unwelcoming creator of this world. The air was appalling, but opening one final door, I soon forgot all about it due to the sight that now met me and made me gasp. This was not just a sewer. There was a settlement down here with what almost looked like a forgotten avenue, patrolled by hideous brutes and sadly decorated with torn and faded banners. Then everything just vanished, and in a vision I saw large doors open, and I heard something calling for me. From the depths rose not only the sickening stench of that vile eater of dung, but also a seductive hiss of purity. Strangely rattled by that vision, I stared in disbelief at the hideous brutes patrolling this forgotten avenue, eventually mustering the courage to go down the ladder, hoping for a moment that I could pass unnoticed. Thankfully, a sight of grace nearby made it possible for me to give my full attention to that horned creature. But as it turned out, my great hammers weren't enough to assert dominance. The glorious sword, however, somehow felt right for these things, and I approached with a fair bit of anticipation. I was not disappointed. It literally was breathtaking. Within minutes, I had removed those 3 vermin from the monstrous prison of their corporeal and sickening flesh. As I already suspected, the large doors and gates in the near vicinity were all locked, so I was forced to go further down into the unknown. At long last, I reached the sewers and marveled at the knowledge of those masters of yore who had built the capital. Enormous and ancient pipes dominated this part, and as I carefully stepped onto them, it became difficult for me to suppress a smile, even with the vile stench slowly suffocating me. Alas, that was not the only repulsive thing about this place, because soon I discovered how gargoyles lurked in every corner. Those ghastly things waited in the shadows, fell down from above, crawled up from beneath me, and hid behind barrels. I finally took out the bow and made sure to go carefully through each and every one of those nasty devils. Within minutes, I ventured further down into this horrid place, only to come upon a couple of those nightmarish things which haunted me so many months ago. This time would be different, though, and indeed it was, just not entirely as expected. On the other hand, who was I to disturb their peaceful slumber in this forgotten part of the city? If I truly was to become a generous ruler and not a disturber of peace, I would have to know when to forgive and forget, and benevolently go the other way. As I tried my luck, moving in another direction, I was met with even more of those filthy rats and poisonous plants, which suffocated unwary travelers with their toxic fumes. But what gave me a proper scare was the hands lurking in the ceiling and beneath the watery surface of these ancient structures. Was that who I thought it was? Surely that couldn't be the defiling individual I had previously conversed with at the Roundtable hold. I couldn't even pay any attention to his senile ramblings. My heart just broke as I saw how that creature had crumpled. He was but a shadow of his former self, that much was clear. The infamous dung-eater, it seemed, had grown old. Withering away for decades, in this dank prison cell hidden beneath the golden streets of the capital, had destroyed this once fear-mongering terror. He was clearly no threat anymore, not to me, nor the capital. And I decided to allow him to leave his cell, and to pass away from this world in a more gentle way. Upon releasing him, I could swear he mumbled how he would honor the citizens of this world henceforth.
Along with their children, and their children's children, for all time to come.
It was deeply satisfying to channel grace instead of grief. Feeling pleased with myself and my benign action, which had now secured a decidedly happy ending to that past reign of horror, I ventured deeper into the sewers. But walking through these dark tunnels full of large slugs, I somehow felt as if I was slowly approaching something out of this world. This curious sensation ignited a frenzied burst of energy in me, and I kept at it for hours, moving with an increasing sense of determination. I did not know what exactly was waiting for me down here, but there was something. Eventually, after smiting more of those hideously horned brutes, I came upon unexpected shortcuts, and much to my surprise, ended up where I began. This place was a bloody maze. Suffering from a distinct urge to ease my tension a bit, I allowed myself another visit to the Roundtable hold. What in the... My pleasure-seeking companion wasn't here. She wasn't supposed to do that. None of the other residents seemed to know anything about her whereabouts.
What is it?
This unexpected absence made me panic, and in my desperation, I turned to that theatrical and, quite frankly, obnoxious fellow whom I had been avoiding for the longest time.
I'm known as D. I hunt down those who live in death and weed their death root.
He was so full of himself, but before I knew it, I had told him everything, and he insisted that he knew what to do with her dagger.
I know very well whose dagger it is. Why don't I return it to them for you? Good work, bringing this to me.
Full of regret and constant craving, I went to buy supplies from the husky grannies before heading back to the sewers, only to notice something quite out of the ordinary. What was that? A message had been left for me, and with horror, I realized what it said. "I'll defile you next. Come to the outer moat." I froze and inhaled the stench of rotting flesh. The aging creature I freed had been rambling and harmless, or so I thought. Why did he even want to meet me at that place? There was nothing out there. Wait, that wasn't entirely true. There was someone who had become quite dear to me. Oh no, by the gods, what had I done? Desperately imploring Torrent to ride as if my life depended on it, I soon reached my destination, fearful as well as anxious. Thank the gods, he was still alive. Exhausted from that scare the message had given me, I talked to the old prisoner, even though he wasn't particularly pleased with what I could tell him about his former cellmate.
That monster. He's lurking round here.
I had decided to protect this unlikely friend of mine, and began searching the nearby terrain for that deceitful scourge, whom I had been tricked into releasing. Who could have known what would happen? I looked under every rock, but as I arrived at a remote part of the outer moat, a shadow fell upon me, and a terrible realization emerged. By the gods! He was alone with no one to protect him from that demonic force. For some reason I knew, as I approached that friendly brute so fond of prawns, that I was too late.
Serves me right. Fitting bloody end. For a jumped up little shit with big ideas.
What a wicked thing to do.
Help me out. Would you, mate? I don't want to get cursed. Just let me die. I don't want to live like this. Not anymore. So, please.
And just like that, he was gone from this world. I hesitantly picked up his gear, unsure of what to do about it. There he was, that despicable pervert. Blind with fury, I tore into him.
Kill you. Oh, your corpse. Then the pot will be
Slaying this disgusting creature did me no good, nor did it change the terrible fact that I had caused my friend's tragic demise, all due to a pathetic need to become a just ruler How little I knew. And because of my unbecoming vanity, a terrifying fate had befallen that poor man. As if living a waking nightmare, I found the culprit's reddish shadow in the Roundtable hold.
There you are. You warded off my blessing, despite the curse stirring within you. No one has succeeded in that before. How? I thought. Then it hit me that you are, in fact, me.
What nonsense was this?
And I am the dung eater. It is my flesh that must receive the blessing.
No more blessings for you, vermin.
Defile my flesh with the seedbed curse. Hundreds will be reborn cursed. And they'll bear thousands of cursed children, who'll bear tens of thousands more. A few of those will be born just like me.
I wasn't done
And they'll kill.
with that abnormality. Not by far. I could not allow this fiend to live anymore. To hell with misguided forgiveness. Returning to his dank prison cell in the dark sewers below the capital, there wasn't even a question of what I had to do. Thus, the infamous eater of dung and his profane vision of heirs were ended. Looming over his corporeal remains, I noticed the sickening design of his apparel and suddenly felt burdened. This was indeed a cell, but not of this world. It was the cell of mankind itself, doomed to suffer for all eternity in muffled solitude, mute and deaf, unable to grasp that this was the empty space within, devoid of grace and hope. Then I felt it again, even stronger than before. That tempting presence deep below the capital was calling unto me with smouldering promises of absolution, and I began a slow descent into madness. You wouldn't have been able to recognize me if you had met me back then, struck by grief and guilt, slaying everything in my path, without even the slightest hint of hesitation. Eventually, I found my way to tunnels which hadn't been used in millennia, except to throw away unwanted individuals. I lost myself in that hellish maze, but the tremors caused by my misplaced sense of self hadn't abated at that point, and I felt nothing, moving slowly through these forgotten artifacts of a bygone culture. After days in this perpetual darkness, or perhaps it was even weeks, I found a lift, and as it moved down into strange and unknown depths, I was granted a magnificent sight of otherworldly architecture. Then, in a grand and clearly cultish chamber of worship, a monstrous lord appeared in a black cloud, only to annihilate me seconds after. It was here that I decided to honor my dead friend with his iron balls. To this day, I have no recollection of the fight itself. I only remember fleeting glimpses of me smashing that hideous beast while shouting Boggott's name over and over again. The dream-like encounter ended, and I found myself in front of a chest. Was this it? There was nothing here. It was too much, and finally breaking down from that terrible lack of closure, I began smashing Boggott's balls of iron into the chest, and whatever else I could get my hands on. What was that? Wait a moment. Had somebody been trapped down here? If I had been myself, I would have mourned that fellow's sorry fate, but eerie music flowed toward me, and my body began to tremble. I could feel it again, and this time it was so close I could almost touch it. That enigmatic presence seemed to burn me from just beyond the barrier. Yet I couldn't pass. It was impenetrable and had been locked by something or someone, and it tormented me. Somewhere above me in the golden capital was the key that would allow me access to the mystery in the depths. I felt sure of it. I would, as the rightful ruler of this degenerate city, claim it and finally penetrate that closed domain. I would avenge the heinous crimes of this filthy world and make sure to punish all of them. It's amusing how life surprises you at times, even in a world such as this, because as I approached whatever was waiting for me up there, I was suddenly reminded that this gigantic structure was the ancient skeleton of an enormous dragon. After reaching my destination, I introduced myself to a local guard, but was also overcome by a sudden surge of kindness and decided to spare another noble creature out of the sheer goodness of my heart. While I did feel called to exterminate all of the disgusting obscenities of this world, that of course neither made me malicious nor cruel. It was at this point that I noticed a curious doorway leading into a nearby building, and for some reason, I felt drawn to it. Unfortunately, before giving in to my yearning, I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything important, and suddenly found myself part of a rather embarrassing skirmish, which didn't really work out for me, not even the slightest. Instead of keeping this silly and entirely needless dance macabre going for weeks, I went the other way and got to investigate the site, which had ignited my curiosity. But as I entered a large and dusty hall, I was instantaneously hit by an eerie sense of familiarity. I rummaged through a vulgar set of clothing left by some long-dead eccentric, found delight in a painting depicting the capital, and was nearly terrified unto death by a couple of filthy servants lurking in the kitchen. What foul food had they been cooking, and why did it smell wrong? I didn't dare so much as see if the smoked meat was any good. There was no telling what animal it had come from, or if it even was an animal. After fighting off a horrendously disfigured dog prowling the deserted streets, I found my way to the first floor and felt a chill down my spine. This was the stronghold I had visited regularly. But at the same time, it wasn't. One thing was certain, though. This place was somehow connected to the Roundtable hold. The generous maiden who had given me so much comfort was also missing from this empty container of camaraderie. I hadn't expected to find halls such as these devoid of life, and it pierced me with sorrow as I ran through the dusty corridors. There used to be light here, but now there was nothing but darkness. This was an empty place, and I felt a queer sadness arise in my chest. Not even the hairy fingers, nor their degenerate and toothless mistress of a granny, was anywhere to be seen. The peculiar ordeal of loneliness was out of this world, and since the silence was anything but enjoyable, I even sought out Gideon. Who could have known that I would end up missing his arrogant voice? In the end, I entered the locked room which the despicable eater of dung had soiled, the vermin who had caused so much suffering for this world, including one of my only friends. Here, I found the sad remains of another one of his victims, doomed to spend eternity deflowered on a bed of corpses. Outside once again, rattled and miserable, I took a deep breath and began an otherworldly ascent. I was going upward, but this part of the journey wasn't done on stairs. Instead, I ran on enormous roots, which had found their way down onto the streets. This wild growth must have been going on for eons, with little or no interference from the clearly absent ruler of this once glorious city. I encountered several uncanny creatures who not only tried to protect this strange territory, but also somehow had become one with the tree they had devoted their lives to. Oh dear, this hardly bode well. Who was that magnificent lord? Then a memory resurfaced. Back in Godric's castle of torn limbs, I had seen a statue. The resemblance was undeniable, but this thing was a mere phantom and didn't boast the imposing lion. It was a petty descendant, a withered fragment of a forefather's strength. Well, almost. I decided this illusion didn't deserve my sword, and just like expected, the mirage wasn't, despite the initial burst of power from its potent kin, difficult to overcome. It was almost as if his movements were orchestrated in accordance with strict principles, and it didn't take me long to realize which patterns were governing his attacks. The victory, however, left me with a bitter aftertaste. I had expected more from someone in the likeness of that unknown and legendary figure. But the smouldering presence below the capital forced me to go on, and within minutes I had climbed more roots and came upon an eerie sight, which made me tremble. I had to tread carefully to avoid long-dead and withered pilgrims who, for some unknown reason, had died here. What had happened to them? Had they been killed? Or did they perhaps starve to death, while waiting in vain for a divine revelation from an absent god? I never found out. After handling a pathetically lazy assassin drowsing nearby, I hesitantly entered a glorious bedchamber of outright mesmerizing proportions. Had a god lived here? The thought quickly dissolved, because I was at long last approaching the erdtree, and would face whomever was in charge in this hollow shell of a capital. A grand open space came into view, and I saw the silhouette of someone approaching in the distance. But I hadn't expected the words that greeted me.
Graceless, tarnished.
That voice was familiar. Was that really him?
What is thy business with these thrones?
How naive of me. Of course this maladjusted brute was the one in charge.
Godric the Golden.
Dust, I'm afraid.
The twin prodigies, Mikola and Melania.
There was that name again? That infamous warrior was hiding up north, according to Millicent.
General Radahn.
Deceased.
Praetor Rykard.
Killed.
Luna Princess Rani.
Spoken for.
Willful traitors. All.
Why did this brute have issues with everybody but himself? That was a bit pathetic.
Thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition.
And why did he have such a strange obsession with other people's ambition? He should learn to mind his own damn business.
Felled by King Morgott, last of all kings.
And just like that, Margit the Molester, whose true name apparently had been Morgott all along, surprised me one last time. Still, his diminishing catalogue of tricks and empty threats didn't change the outcome of the fight. And in the end, that horned manhandler of men got what he had coming.
By my curse, such I cannot bear. Thy part in this shall not be forgiven.
Why blame me for his own failure? And why this talk of shame? Maybe those large bones of his didn't extend to his loins, and for some reason it made me shiver, not only with disgust, but also pity.
Tarnished, thou art but a fool. The erdtree wards off all who deign approach. We are all forsaken.
Gasping for air one last time, life ebbed out of him, like sands through the hourglass. Now close to the end of my long journey, rain hid my tears as I approached the stairway, leading into the very midst of this axis mundi. What was this? Impenetrable thorns made it impossible for me to proceed. Was this a trick? At the sight of Grace, which had suddenly sprouted in the middle of the wide open space, my mysterious maiden once again approached me.
Hello again, old friend. You are unable to enter the erdtree. No? Prevented by the mantle of barbs.
By the gods.
The thorns
What an
are
impressive
impenetrable.
demonstration of
A husk
using
of
one's
the earth.
eyes.
The only way to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord is to pass the thorns.
You don't say.
My purpose.
How would I ever have known that?
So I'd like you to undertake a new journey
What? Surely she was
With me.
jesting.
to the Flame of Ruin. I can set the erdtree aflame.
Her musings about setting the erdtree aflame had also reignited my anger toward the degenerate criminals of this city. I was ready to go down into the depths once again, already knowing the way through the crumbling sewers beneath the capital. It didn't take me many hours to return to the hidden tunnel with the withered corpse, and just as expected, the magical barrier was gone. Terror struck me. This place was littered with corpses. A great number of creatures had died together in an enclosed domain far beneath the surface of the earth, seemingly in great agony. I couldn't even begin to imagine the horror of such an end, being unable to breathe or seek help. In this space, no one could hear you scream. I found myself looking in disbelief at an unsettling and many-layered structure, going even further down into the darkness of the earth. Who was that? Terrified, I nearly soiled myself as I came upon a frightening fellow wandering among the disfigured corpses. He suffered from the same issues as those frenzied villagers in Liurnia. Thus, I began on yet another uncomfortable part of my journey. Bloody hell. Where I had to perform extraordinary feats with this aging body of mine, executing dexterous moves no sensible man would ever dare consider. Descending even further into this lethal tomb of failed acrobats, I was haunted by the eerie music that flowed through this forgotten part of the capital. Ha! Who would ever use such a thing? Look safe. What in the... I felt it in my bones. I was approaching whatever smoldering enigma was waiting for me. At long last, there it was. Her! What was that shameless eater of men doing here? How had she even reached this place?
Go to the door ahead. After divesting yourself of your possessions, it will surely open, and the three fingers will welcome you.
I didn't understand anything anymore, nor did I care. I was about to attain an unimaginable blessing, which could help the countless victims of this world to true freedom. Something was rapidly growing inside me, and the deep longing to end that perpetual and needless suffering ravished my soul, along with painfully familiar voices whispering to me from beyond the grave. This hellish torment had to end. This was it. I did indeed find myself in front of a door, while the voices of the dead kept whispering words uttered long ago. But then again, calling it a door wasn't entirely accurate. It looked more like petrified and reddened scar tissue, almost in the form of a gaping wound that had been burned. I didn't know what was waiting, but every fiber in my body screamed that eternal salvation from suffering could be found beyond this gateway. Yet deep within me, I felt my soul resist. In that very breath, almost as if the presence waiting for me sensed a change of heart, something in the air shifted. Darkness took me, and when I was able to see again, I knew where I was. Within the blink of an eye, I had somehow been brought to the remains of that blind and helpless maiden, slain by bandits, in the absence of her father. Once more, I listened to her tale.
I've escaped from Castle Morn. The servants there have rebelled.
And was forced to hear the desperate plea
I
again.
implore you.
Enough already. This was too much. And as darkness came over me again, I was tormented with her father's lament.
I chose duty over my daughter's safety.
I recognized the scene instantaneously. I was now in the academy, or rather, just outside the halls of learning. In that measly little corner, those degenerate scholars had offered kind-hearted thops. It hadn't taken them long to end the sensitive man's joyous studies, as well as his life. He would now remain in this faraway prison of solitude forever, condemned to the damp shadow of an institution that never even considered him an equal. The lands between had become barren with his demise. Never again would travelers encounter a soft-spoken and lone scholar sitting in the shade of a crumbling ruin, daydreaming of what lies yonder.
The very stars.
My third reawakening into this ghastly shell of a world brought me to none other than my friend, who was killed as a fatal consequence of weak and misplaced compassion. I was forced to look at his manhandled body and contemplate my own part in his tragic fate. I tried to soothe myself and whispered, "I'm not here. This isn't happening." It was no longer possible for travelers to come upon this ruffian with a heart of gold, nor would they witness his transformation from menacing threat to lovable enjoyer of prawns. But what truly set this world apart in terms of cruelty was the fact that nature didn't care. It was indifferent. His story and his suffering were nothing but a tiny drop of water in a deep and dark ocean of organic matter. This empty sphere was haunted by a fog of nothingness, a fog that, again and again, swallowed a myriad of untold victims. The erdtree devoured everything, and would continue to do so until someone put a stop to this theater of perpetual annihilation. It was time. But just as I was about to remove my armor and enter that sweet path which led to true liberation, another voice called out for me.
I am Alexander.
Loud and clear, full of love and empathy.
My thanks, 1,000 thanks.
But of course, he was still alive and well, spreading his joyous dogma of kindness.
Well played, good sir.
Wherever he went. His words always warmed me, and had done so ever since I met him ages ago in Limgrave, stuck in a hole in the ground. As long as this empty and terrible container of suffering had spared a noble soul such as him, hope remained. Crying with relief, I turned away and made my way out of this darkness of despair. When I finally climbed out of the sewers, it was night. Stars shone down from above me, and the chill air felt rejuvenating. I was alive, and greedily breathed it all in. I still felt its smoldering presence, though. Yet it had somehow become dormant. Deep below me, beyond that forsaken cathedral, it remained patiently waiting, as it had done for eons. Almost as if it accepted the fact that Alexander had rejuvenated my hope for this world of hurt. This gruesome chamber of suffering wasn't beyond repair after all. His mere existence suggested as much. To enter the erdtree and once and for all seize the throne, I would have to reach that mysterious flame of ruin, wherever it might be. Who was I to seek the cleansing of the end times, when that kind soul still wandered this earth on his own? Only a coward would shield their eyes from his path of light. At long last, ready to accept the advice of that mysterious maiden who had accompanied me since I was born into this world, I began on the journey north. I would go to the end of my given path, and finally complete the torturous quest for that wretched throne, so this world could be given the ruler it so desperately yearned for. And none other than Alexander would become my trusted advisor. Together, we were going to be glorious,